Cyclone Narelle bears down on Cape York Peninsula, packing winds of up around 300 kilometres an hour.
This may be the biggest system that many people have seen in living memory, and that's why we're asking people to prepare as we have.
The government releases a further 500 million litres of fuel into the market, while the Prime Minister again pleads with motorists not to panic buy. Iran targets Gulf neighbours in retaliation for an Israeli attack on a massive gas field. And an enthusiastic Hobart homecoming. The Danish royals enjoy a day in Queen Mary's birthplace on the final day of their Australian visit. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Joe O'Brien. The very powerful cyclone Narelle is expected to hit the far north Queensland coast sometime tomorrow morning. As a sign of things to come, a spot in the Danetree's already had 100 millimetres of rain, and winds are starting to pick up in parts of the region, gusting up to 60 k's an hour on the coast to the south of the system. So right now, the cyclone is about 400 kilometres east of Cohen. It's already a Category 5, the strongest category of storm, with winds gusting up to nearly 300 kilometres an hour. It's expected to hit the coast around 7 a.m. tomorrow, so that's a bit earlier than expected, near the small community of Port Stewart, which has been evacuated, and then head towards Cohen, about 30 k's from the coast. It's home to about 300, 400 people, and it's still likely to be a Category 2 strength once it crosses the Cape and hits the community of Arakoon on the other side. About 1,000 people live there. So the cyclone warning zone is from Lockhart River in the north to Cape Tribulation in the south. Rainfall up to 500 millimetres is expected as it crosses the coast. At least 8 schools are closed now, with more to shut tomorrow. Widespread power outages are expected. Extra police have been sent to isolated communities, and swiftwater rescue teams are in place. The Queensland Premier David Crisafulli says the ferocity of Cyclone Narelle should not be underestimated.
If a Category 5 system crosses the coast in this location, it'll be the first time that's happened in over 100 years. And if a Category 5 system crosses the Queensland coast, it'll be just the 4th time that's happened in half a century. It's a serious event, a significant event, and we're asking people to take precautions and do the little things that make all the difference.
And Joanne Nelson is a traditional owner in the town of Cohen, and she joins us now. Joanne Nelson, welcome. So the cyclone is still a way off the coast. What's the weather like there in Cohen now? Yeah, and how long have you lived in the area, and have you ever been through a Category 4 or 5 cyclone before?
No, I've been here all my life, but I've never been through a Category 5 cyclone.
And,
first time.
yeah, and so Port Stewart is a little spot on the coast, and we might bring a map up now showing just how exposed it is in the path of this storm. The Premier mentioned that little community has been evacuated, so you can see Cohen there, and we'll zoom in a second and show the Port Stewart. There we go. So just a couple of little homes there right on the Stewart River, really exposed. What can you tell us about the people who live there? What's been happening with them over the last couple of days?
They got evacuated yesterday with the helicopter, so the helicopter went down there and picked up about 9 people. Yeah. Out of the 6 people, my 2 cousins and partner. Yeah. Yeah. But they're all safe and sound there back in Cohen.
Yeah, and you're happy they're out of Port Stewart?
Yeah, very happy.
And so what's been happening with preparations in Cohen itself?
The local ranger group been looking at the local residents, cleaning the yard and whatnot. Cullen's been offering their Cullen entrepreneur their big heavy machineries around to the community and help out. Yeah.
And is there a strong building where people can go tomorrow if they want?
To the Wellbeing Centre. I call it Puma Pima, but there's some call it well-being.
Yeah. And are there, I understand the capacity there is 100 or so, is it?
Yeah.
And so have all those spots been taken as far as you know, or are people generally staying in their homes?
Staying in our house, so my family are. But other people, like children with children, are on down to the well-being centre, old people.
And you're having a few extra people in your home?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a brick house. Yeah.
Right, so you feel like your home should be okay to get through this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a 4-bedroom brick, so, and we did everything to protect ourselves. So. Yeah.
And Joanne, has it been pretty wet there already this season?
It's been very so. At the moment, it's season in Cowan. You can't go south, you can't go north. The only way out is plane, but now because of the cyclone, don't have any mail run next week. So,
and they were saying they're expecting rainfall of up to 500 millimetres as this cyclone crosses the Cape. Is there any flooding risk in Cowan or not really?
Well, in Cowan we've got 2 rivers, one Lankey and the other one Cowan River, so it's the only 2. But yeah, they could be things if we can have that much rain.
Yeah, and it's been that wet lately that is there already a fair bit of water in the system?
Yeah, there's a lot of water in the system.
Yeah. And so how's the community feeling generally ahead of this storm hitting tomorrow?
I think everyone's feeling they're a bit scared. Yeah, they're hoping and praying, I think.
Yeah. And we were having a chat to the guy who runs the Armbrust food, the supermarket there yesterday, and he's saying he's got plenty of food, so you could be isolated for a while, but you're confident there's enough food in town?
Oh, yeah.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Okay, Joanne Nelson, thanks so much for having a chat to us from Cowan, and good luck with the next 24 hours there.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So, as Queensland braces for the arrival of Cyclone Narelle, remote communities in the east of the Northern Territory are also making preparations. The NT government is now evacuating residents to Darwin, just weeks after the Daly River and Palumpa communities were brought to the capital due to flooding. Tilda Colling reports from Darwin.
More than 500 residents of a remote community in the east of the Northern Territory are being evacuated to Darwin ahead of the impact of tropical cyclone Narelle. The residents of Numbulwar will be staying in a high school gym, which will be fenced off from the rest of the school, which will continue as normal. In the east communities of the Northern Territory, Groote Island and Borroloola, they're bracing for impact. It's expected to be a Category 3 system when it does hit the coast, and emergency services say police have been bolstered in the region to help prepare the communities for that impact. The system was then expected to track across the Northern Territory. Currently, Katherine is expected to be impacted by the system, which could cause moderate flooding in that area, which is already inundated with water from severe flooding in the past few weeks. As the system moves across, it is expected that it will have slight impacts to Darwin. We will be seeing a little bit of wind and rain, although it isn't expected to cross Darwin as it moves further west. Now, for flood-impacted residents, we've also heard today that public housing rent will be paused until flood-impacted residents can get back into their homes, and pastoralists' rent will also be paused for a period of up to a year. For now, residents are being warned to get ready in case of emergency, update their cyclone kits and have their emergency plans ready as Tropical Cyclone Narelle crosses across Australia.
And if you're in far north Queensland, you can keep up to date with the latest information on ABC local radio through the next 24 hours. It's always a really good source of information in these emergencies, and it really brings a sense of local community when you hear the stories of other people going through the challenges of dealing with this. So those frequencies are, if you're in Cowan, on 105.9 FM, in Cooktown on 105.7 FM, Lakeland 106.1 FM, Laura 106.1 FM, Mossman, Port Douglas and the Daintree on 6:39 AM, Weipa 10:44 AM. You can also get updates on the ABC Emergency website and the ABC Listen app. And later this hour, we'll get the latest on how the cyclone is tracking with our Queensland weather presenter, Jenny Woodward. It'll be good to see Jenny. And in around 50 minutes, we're expecting the next update to come through from the Weather Bureau on the position and strength of the cyclone, and we'll bring you that information as soon as it pops up. Federal Energy Minister Chris Bowen has confirmed an extra 500 million litres of petrol and diesel are now flowing through the economy. The government has also created a national fuel coordination task force and is again urging people not to panic buy. Political reporter Sarah Tomevska joins us now from Canberra. Sarah, g'day. So the Energy Minister spoke a short time ago. What do you have to say?
Yeah, Joe, Chris Bowen, they're reiterating that the federal government is doing everything in its power to boost supply and ensure the distribution of fuel to affected regions in Australia. Highlighting that figure there, an extra 519 million litres of petrol and diesel now released from Australia's fuel reserves after a decision was made at the end of last week to unlock 20% of Australia's petrol reserves. So, look, the Energy Minister Chris Bowen tempering expectations, saying it will still take some time to flow. The federal government really viewing its role in this supply shortage scenario as ensuring there is enough supply, but the responsibility of distributing fuel where it needs to go resting with state and territory governments. And to that end, we heard from the Prime Minister today that a national fuel task force has been established and will be headed by Anthea Harris, who is the former Chief Executive of the Australian Energy Regulator. Asked about what her powers would be, Energy Minister Chris Bowen confirmed that she will not have the power to direct the supply of fuel. Let's hear what he had to say.
Fuel Security Coordinator will advise government. Ministers have powers. I have powers. State ministers have powers. At the moment, what we're doing is working with industry to ensure that the fuel can get to where it's needed as such, as best we can. The fuel task force coordinator will work with government. It's ministers who hold powers.
So the Energy Minister also reiterating that the supply of liquid fuels on shipments to Australia are secure for the rest of March and into April, but acknowledging that in that latter half of April and beyond into May, the situation is a little bit more uncertain.
And Sarah, what's been the response from the states and territories to this new fuel task force?
Yeah, Joe, look, mixed responses. The Northern Territory Chief Minister Leah Finocchiaro welcomed the establishment of the task force, saying she's sure that states and territories will work well with Anthea Harris, though acknowledging that the Northern Territory is not as badly affected in terms of supply shortages as other jurisdictions, for example, Queensland. We heard from Queensland Premier David Crisafulli, who was quite a lot more critical of the way the federal government has handled this. He pointed out that the Queensland government raised concerns about supply shortages with the Federal Energy Minister last week, and he says those concerns were met with ridicule, and that a fairly pointed remark from the Queensland Premier said, saying that if the government had clearer messaging, then consumers would avoid stockpiling fuel.
Our request on behalf of Queensland is very clear. We want two things to flow: information and fuel. And if the government can work on those plans and show the clarity of messaging, people will respond and respond accordingly.
A task force has been established by the Prime Minister, which we wholeheartedly support. It's a very strong move and we need that national leadership at this time of global fuel crisis. For the Territory, though, we don't have shortages of supply and we're not experiencing some of the same concerns that some of our state and territory counterparts are. Our concerns are predominantly still focused on access because of flooding. And so that continues to be something we manage on a case-by-case basis.
And the PM's also been up today. Did he have anything to say about the war in general?
He did. He seemed to urge the US and Israel to wrap up the war with Iran. Speaking to Triple M Radio in Hobart this morning, Anthony Albanese said, "I can see this ending," meaning the conflict in the Middle East. He said that the objective of denying Iran a nuclear weapon had been achieved. Now, when he was asked about this a few hours later during his press conference, he seemed to walk back that language a little bit. He said he's hopeful that the war will soon end. Let's listen to what he had to say.
We, of course, are not participants in the conflict. And so what we say, though, is we'll continue to argue for a de-escalation. It's not certain. That's the truth, how long this will last. But I'm hopeful that you can see an end point. The objectives of denying Iran the opportunity to have a development of a nuclear weapon have been secured. So that was objective number one. Iran's ability to engage in attacks in the region have also been undermined by this process as well. So we'll continue to monitor, continue to engage we receive updated briefings, but we'll continue as well to call for that de-escalation.
Now, we know Iran still has around 400 kilograms of enriched uranium in underground stockpiles, but it seems the Prime Minister is at least suggesting there is an off-ramp here. And of course, a swift wrap-up of this latest conflict in the Middle East is in Australia's economic interest, in the global economic interests, and certainly that is the outcome that both sides of politics would like to see. OK,
Sarah Tomeska there in Canberra. The competition watchdog will investigate allegations of anti-competitive conduct by the dominant fuel suppliers in regional and rural Australia. National Consumer Affairs reporter Michael Atkin has the details.
They've opened an investigation into allegations of anti-competitive conduct by major fuel suppliers, particularly affecting regional and rural Australia. We have very little details, I have to say, but except to say that the allegations are that major fuel suppliers and their Ampol, BP, Mobil and Viva Energy are under investigation over allegations that they engaged in conduct that affected independent players in those markets. But what those allegations are beyond that, I couldn't tell you, and it seems very unlikely that this has anything to do with price gouging, that this is all about anti-competitive conduct and supply of diesel fuel into those markets in regional Australia. And I would say that this is a very unusual approach from the ACCC. Its investigations, it normally keeps very close to its chest, particularly when they're in the very early stages. And the ACCC tipped its hat to that in the announcement it made this morning, but said that it considers the allegations very serious and that it needs to investigate urgently, and that it was taking this step of telling the public about it. We've only heard back from BP. I've contacted all of the companies. I'd expect they'll come back to us later today. BP says it takes these matters very seriously, that it's trying to understand the allegations at the moment and engaging with the ACCC over them, and said while the investigation is ongoing, it would be inappropriate to comment further.
Iranian missiles have struck Qatar's main LNG facility in retaliation for an earlier Israeli strike on a gas field in Iran. Qatar Energy is reporting extensive damage at the Ras Laffan industrial city, an energy industry hub where the bulk of Qatar's LNG processing takes place. It followed attacks on Iran's Pars gas field, part of the world's largest natural gas deposit, which Iran shares with Qatar across the Gulf. The US says the strikes were carried out by Israel with its consent, though Israel has not yet taken responsibility. In response to the recent Iranian attacks on Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia has threatened to take military action if necessary. Correspondent Catherine Diss reports from Jerusalem.
Well, Iran warned it would come, and the retaliation is now here. This war has now really taken a dangerous turn, and this is a very fast-moving situation. Qatar has confirmed that Iran has struck the Ras Laffan industrial city, home to the world's largest LNG refinery. It's caused fires and resulted in serious damage to the facility. Qatar has released a statement strongly condemning and denouncing what it calls brazen Iranian actions. The country's foreign minister calling the Iranian attacks a dangerous escalation and a flagrant violation of its sovereignty and direct threat to its national security. Saudi Arabia has also confirmed attempted strikes, saying that it has intercepted and destroyed a drone attempting to approach one of its gas facilities in an eastern province, but no damage was reported. And we're also hearing of reports of strikes in the Saudi capital, Riyadh, and in the UAE.
The kingdom is not going to succumb to pressure. And on the contrary, this pressure will backfire. Will backfire politically, will backfire, I believe, morally, and certainly, as we have stated quite clearly, we have reserved the right to take military actions if deemed necessary.
So how did we get here? Well, this all started when Israel struck a major Iranian gas field in the Gulf. This is no longer just about taking out chiefs within the Iranian regime or hitting missile launches or hitting military bases. This is now striking at the heart of the Iranian economy and the broader region. Now, this basin is jointly owned by Iran and Qatar, each owning their side of the maritime border. And while the Iranian side was hit, this is being seen as further dragging a Gulf nation, that being Qatar, into a conflict it wants nothing to do with. This is already having global ramifications. The price of oil jumped more than 5% on news of the attack. It's continued to rise throughout the morning. This started with the simple fact that oil and gas couldn't make its way through the Strait of Hormuz. Now it's about security of those supplies and infrastructure that's being shaken.
Catherine Diss reporting there. A post shared on social media by former professional cyclist Rowan Dennis, whose wife died after being struck by a car he was driving, has been described as deeply offensive. Here's reporter Eva Blandis.
The post of a luxury car alongside the caption, "What an absolute weapon," comes less than a year after he received a suspended sentence in South Australia's District Court for an incident before his wife Melissa Hoskins' death. Dennis pleaded guilty to an aggravated charge of creating likelihood of harm over the incident and was later handed a sentence to be of good behaviour for 2 years. His wife, Olympic cyclist Melissa Hoskins, died in December 2023 after being struck by a car driven by Dennis following an argument with him. Since the initial post, Dennis has taken to the social media platform again, on one occasion posting a photo of his children with the caption, "Two absolute weapons," and on another occasion, CCTV footage of a Channel 7 news crew asking him questions. Victims' Rights Commissioner Sarah Quick has condemned his posts, saying they show a profound lack of respect for Melissa and her family. The ABC has sent questions to Dennis on Instagram, but he blocked that account and didn't reply to any questions.
And now with finance, here's Sam Yang.
Australia's unemployment rate has risen to 4.3% in February, up from 4.1% a month earlier, according to seasonally adjusted figures from the Bureau of Statistics. The number of employed people increased by about 49,000 in February, while the share of people either working or looking for work increased to 66.9%. The release of the figures comes after the Reserve Bank increased interest rates for the second time this year to 4.1%, pointing to inflation concerns. The war in the Middle East has led to a spike in global oil prices, driving up costs in Australia, which could force the RBA to hike rates again.
It really does depend on how the Middle East plays out, but I do expect, right now the RBA is trying to get those inflation expectations out there. They're trying to make sure they're anchored so people aren't asking for bigger wage increases and putting pressure on wages and prices to go up. So I would expect at this stage the RBA to probably put another hike in this year.
The Australian share market has snapped a two-day winning streak as banks and tech stocks weakened and miners tracked lower on softer resources prices, while energy shares rose to their highest level since early 2024. Now let's take a look at the numbers. The All Ords and the ASX 200 index closed down around 1.7% each. 8 out of the 11 sectors were trading lower. If I take a look at the movers now, the likes of Viva Energy, Woodside Energy and Karoon Energy were the standouts today. Heavyweight miners like Ora Banda, West Gold and Genesis Minerals lost substantial ground. Turning across the region where it's a sea of red, the NZ50 down around 2%, Nikkei in Japan down around 3.1% as investors weighed the impact of the Middle East conflict on corporate growth. Kospi in South Korea down around 2.6%, while Hang Seng down nearly 2%. Over to the US, Wall Street ended sharply lower after the Federal Reserve held interest rates steady and projected only one more rate cut for the rest of the year, as officials took stock of economic risks from rising oil prices and the US and Israeli war with Iran. The Dow Jones Index down 1.6%, the S&P 500 down 1.4%, and the Nasdaq Composite lost about 1.5%. Oil prices have shot up quite a bit today in response to escalating tensions in the Middle East. They have broken through the 110 psychological barrier today. Crude oil prices are currently buying around $112 a barrel. The surging oil prices has added to inflation concerns globally and dampening global risk sentiment. Oil prices are trading slightly higher. And the Australian dollar is a little stronger against the greenback. It's buying around 70.4 US cents. And now this finance.
The Matildas will face Japan in the Asian Cup final after Japan's impressive 4-1 win over South Korea. Max Tillman reports from Sydney.
The Matildas are now just one game away from lifting the Women's Asian Cup on home soil, but they will be taking no chances against Japan, who cruised past South Korea 4-1 in their semi-final clash. More concerning for the Matildas, though, the fact Japan have only conceded one goal throughout the entire tournament. Australia booked their ticket to the final with a hard-fought 2-1 win over China, courtesy of Caitlin Ford, and a sublime strike by Sam Kerr on a tight angle. But the relief of their semi-final win may not be as overwhelming after watching Japan's clinical dismantling of South Korea, building with patience from their own end and smothering their opponents when they weren't on the ball. 24 goals scored and only one conceded throughout the tournament will no doubt be a worrying sign for the Matildas, who will walk through the tunnel at Stadium Australia as clear underdogs. But there may be some valuable insights from Clubland, with both sides featuring a glut of players plying their trade in England's Women's Super League. The Matilda squad have been keeping a close eye on their Japanese counterparts' run of form over the last year. Vice-Captain Steph Catley says opportunities will be few in such a tight contest, but the team will be ready to pounce if their moment arrives.
We play against loads of their players in the WSL consistently, and they're always up there with the most talented, most consistent players in the team. They're just full of talent, they're so intelligent, and then as a unit they're just a great team. So It's something we're going to have to be so ready for, and it's a massive challenge, but we're excited for it.
Saturday night's final at Stadium Australia in Sydney will see a huge crowd and a home field advantage for the Matildas, but Japan's ruthless form throughout the tournament will make them tough competition to best as the Matildas look towards winning their second continental title.
Max Tillman there. The King and Queen of Denmark have spent the last day of their Australian tour with a visit to Queen Mary's hometown of Hobart. The royal couple's visit will end with a short walk along Hobart's historic Hunter Street, where Tasmanians can greet them. Sophie Jaggers reports from Hobart.
The royal couple have certainly made the most of their first official visit to the States since 2005. Today's visit in Hobart started at Government House, where they were welcomed with a traditional cleansing ceremony. They then went out onto the River Derwent to learn about kelp restoration efforts underway in Tasmania. As they travelled past Queen Mary's former high school, she remarked that some good memories popped up. Their boat ride was followed by a visit to shipbuilder Incat and the agrarian kitchen in the Derwent Valley. They also came here to the Museum of Old and New Art to watch a performance by a Danish electro-pop group. Hunter Street in Hobart CBD was closed this afternoon to facilitate a royal meet and greet, with Tasmanians gathering across the Hobart waterfront for a chance to meet the royal couple. Tonight they'll attend a state reception at Government House to conclude their official Australian tour.
This is ABC News. The top story, Cyclone Narelle is bearing down on Cape York Peninsula, the tip of Queensland. It's now about 275 k's northeast of Cooktown. The system's expected to cross the coast tomorrow morning in the Cohen area at its current Category 5 strength, or possibly a severe Category 4. The government will release more than 500 million litres of petrol and diesel into the market to counter supply constraints caused by the war in the Middle East. A new national task force has been created and will be led by the former chief of the energy regulator, Anthea Harris, who will coordinate the Commonwealth states and territories and steer Australia's efforts to shore up fuel supply. Global oil prices have hit $110 a barrel after missile attacks on two massive energy facilities in the Gulf. Israel has launched strikes on Iran's massive South Pars gas field, and Tehran has retaliated by hitting Qatar's main LNG processing facility, causing extensive damage and halting production. And the King and Queen of Denmark are wrapping up their Australian tour in the Queen's hometown of Hobart. Queen Mary and King Frederick started the day with an official welcome at Government House. The visit will end with a short walk along Hobart's historic Hunter Street, where Tasmanians can greet the King and Queen. So, the Minister for Emergency Management at the federal level, Kristy McBain, spoke earlier at the National Situation Room in Canberra, providing an update on the cyclone. She says Narelle is a very intense system and residents in its path need to prepare.
At this stage, wind gusts in excess of 250 kilometres an hour are possible near the centre of the cyclone as it crosses the Queensland coast. Winds of 155 kilometres per hour are possible from Lockhart River to Cooktown tonight. Heavy rain, which may lead to flash flooding, is possible between Cape Melville and Port Douglas from this evening, extending inland during Friday. After crossing the northeast Queensland coast, Narelle is forecast to continue across Cape York Peninsula and into the Gulf of Carpentaria, and it is likely to move towards the Northern Territory where it will again make landfall in a few days' time. Northern Territory residents in the cyclone's path should also be preparing now, and I understand are now in a watch zone. Please be ready to enact your emergency plans and follow the advice of emergency services. Look out for vulnerable community members, including children and the elderly.
Kristy McBain there, and Queensland weather presenter Jenny Woodward joins us now from Brisbane. Jenny, g'day, and so good to have a local expert. So what's the latest on the path of Narelle?
Well, Joe, conditions have really ramped up in the last 24 hours, and the Category 5 system, as you were saying, 270 kilometres northeast of Cooktown, it's been speeding up now too. It's travelling west at 28 kilometres an hour and really powering across to the coast, and it is expected to cross at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning with Cohen in the firing line. Now, the last time we had a Category 5 system in Queensland was back in 2015 when Marsha hit the Central Coast.
And you've been looking back at the history of cyclones, and there's actually this Narelle has been following a bit of a similar track to a famous cyclone from the past.
Yes, Joe. Queensland's deadliest cyclone hit this region in 1899. Now, there was a big pearling fleet. They had sheltered in Bathurst Bay, and that's where this one's heading, at Cape Melville. The fleet took a direct hit. More than 300 people were killed.
Wow.
There was a huge storm tide as well. There are reports of dolphins being swept up onto the 6-metre-high cliffs. Fortunately, our warning systems are much, much better these days.
Yeah, but really interesting to hear there about the dolphins being swept up onto cliffs because, they've talked that we always hear with cyclones the warning about storm surges, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with this in terms of those storm surges.
Yes. Sorry, I was just going to say the warning at the moment extends from Lockhart River to Cape Tribulation. Now, that, of course, includes Cowan and Cooktown and across the peninsula to the west coast between Mapoon and Pomperau. And that includes Weipa and Arakoon. And we've also got the Northern Territory with a watch zone from south of Nhulunbuy to Port MacArthur.
And so at the moment it's a 5, and they're saying wind speeds in the system now up to pretty close to 300 k's an hour. What sort of wind speed is expected when it actually hits the coast?
Well, Joe, we're expecting a new advice out in, about 10 minutes, and I've had a bit of a clue that it may still be a Category 5 when it gets to the coast. So that means hurricane and storm force winds are expected from Cooktown to the Cape and right down the Gulf of Carpentaria. We've got those warnings, whereas there's a strong wind warning for Torres Strait and around the Cairns coast. So we're looking at sustained winds, that's winds all the time, at 205 kilometres an hour. And on top of that, those gusts up to about 300 kilometres an hour and maybe more.
Yeah.
The central core of that destructive wind area extends about 20 kilometres out from the core, and we're starting to see the eye now, which is really evident on the satellite images. We've got storms firing off around the centre of the core, and that indicates it's still strengthening. It's a really tight, compact system, about 315 kilometres in diameter. And indeed, Australia holds the record for the strongest wind gust ever recorded in the world. Now, that was during Tropical Cyclone Olivia back in 1996. It hit Barrow Island off the West Australian coast, and it recorded a gust of 407 kilometres an hour. Oh. So let's hope we don't get anywhere near that record.
Yeah, I thought you were going to mention Cyclone Tracy then or something like that in terms of wind speed. So interesting to hear there was more powerful winds than that. And is there any chance that this cyclone is going to head off in another direction? It's been pretty consistently saying that Cowan is directly in the firing line.
Yes, Joe. The Bureau have a lot of confidence in this track. All the computer models agree that this is where it's going to go. So we're expecting it to head due west, and then after it crosses over land, it's likely to ease a little bit, but only down to a 3, so still a severe cyclone, and then, of course, head out into the Gulf region.
Yeah, and so take us through what's expected to happen then over the next few days with it heading towards the Northern Territory.
Yeah, so whether it's a 4 or a 5, we're going to have much the same impact for Queensland. Widespread destruction of buildings, vegetation, trees will come down, stripped to nothing, plenty of wildlife in distress, and of course likely power outages. So we've also got that risk of abnormally high tides, and if it crosses during the high tide, it will bring a lot of inundation to those low-lying areas, and we'll see widespread flooding. We've already got a flood watch right across the north. And then as it heads further west, expected to retain cyclone strength on the west coast, kick up again to a Category 3, possibly a 4 as it moves over towards the Northern Territory mainland, and then continue further west right out into the Indian Ocean. So this cyclone is likely to make an appearance on 3 or even 4 coastlines, and that is pretty rare. And we'll expect the next advice to come out at 5 o'clock.
OK, that's 5 o'clock Queensland time. Thanks so much, Jenny.
Thanks, Joe.
And as Cyclone Narelle bears down on far north Queensland, the Northern Territory is still grappling with flooding from last week's torrential downpour. The Territory's Chief Minister, Leah Finocchiaro, says evacuation plans are in place.
Nayu and Palumpa communities have been in Darwin for some time now. We are now moving them to stage 2 evacuations. What that means is from Friday, Palumpa evacuees will be relocated to the Bachelor Outdoor Education Unit in Bachelor. And from Monday, the 23rd of March, the people who have been evacuated from Nayu will be at Bachelor Institute. Both of these facilities will afford a lot more privacy and support, be much more comfortable, and allow us to provide the security, the catering, and all of the support that evacuees need while giving them much greater privacy and stability as we move through this next phase of that evacuation. And we know that recovery is going to take some time. The Daly is still severely flooded, and so we need people to be able to move to that stage 2 evacuation process. They have been notified, and those facilities are stood up. We also today will be evacuating around 500 residents from Numbulwar. They will be arriving at Nightcliff High School today. The Australian Defence Force will be assisting with that evacuation, which we greatly appreciate. Again, the work with our federal counterparts during this entire weather event has been fantastic, and we appreciate it very much. The Department of Children and Families will lead those welfare operations, and I will pass to Susan Bowden, the CE of Education, shortly to be able to provide greater information about that. Needless to say, the move of Numbulwar residents to Nightcliff High School will be temporary as we move people from Foskey Pavilion out to Bachelor Institute. We will then be able to, if we need to, move people from Numbulwar out to Foskey.
Israel has intensified its attacks in Lebanon, destroying bridges across the Litani River, effectively cutting off southern Lebanon from the rest of the country. There are now more than 900,000 people displaced and more than 900 dead across the country. Middle East correspondent Matthew Doran reports from Beirut.
Peeled away by the force of an Israeli strike. The blast and debris causing major destruction, with reminders of those who lived here left littering the street. This is far from Hezbollah's traditional heartland, but suggestions of the allegiances for some of those living here are clear for all to see, and we've had to negotiate access to this site with the militant group. A few streets away, an entire building was levelled. It was the third time it had been hit in recent days, but the last strike needed to raze it to the ground.
And this is all that's left of this multi-storey apartment building. Hours after, you can see that smoke is still coming off the rubble as a fire continues to burn. All the while, the constant reminder of Israeli surveillance with a drone circling overhead.
It's just damage to scare people and to cause panic.
Hassan had already fled the south of the country and was staying over the road from this site.
We won't pay or surrender or give up our land. I'd rather die, rather kill myself than give up my wife and kids.
Street after street in this mixed neighbourhood have been hit. A journalist for a Hezbollah-affiliated TV station, the alleged target here.
These are civilian areas. There are no soldiers, there is no military, only civilians.
At least 10 were killed across these sites as others try to live alongside danger, the new normal in this city. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Beirut.
And the Middle East war is disrupting trade routes relied on by Australia's red meat industry. Industry heads are convening this week to discuss the impact. Andrew Cox from Meat and Livestock Australia explains how important the Middle East market is for Australian exporters.
We send chilled lamb, fresh lamb by air freight to the region. We send high-end Wagyu and long-fed premium beef cuts to the region by air and sea, and we send a lot of sheep meat and beef by sea freight as well, both chilled and frozen. So this conflict has been very disruptive. Sheep meat particularly plays an important role in food security across the region. Good news is, I suppose, that a product is getting in via some ports that are open but heavily constrained. And of course, as long as this conflict continues, those constraints will compound. We have 25,000 flights cancelled in total now across the region, and there's about 1,000 boats waiting off the coast of Oman. So, given the food security implications, exporters are working really hard with customers to make sure that shelves are stocked. Obviously, the restaurant trade particularly has been hit hard, Some products had to be diverted to other markets. I suppose the flip side is that the demand globally is very strong, but of course with fuel and fertiliser costs increasing significantly, it puts margins under threat for the whole sector. Australian exporters are very resilient. We have a lot of trade with the Middle East, but not fully reliant on the Middle East. So, of course, exporters are scrambling. The costs along the supply chain have increased significantly already. So, for the boats and planes that are getting into the Gulf, there's increased cost, and of course, fuel costs, all the way down the supply chain impact farmers, exporters, freight shippers, etc. So, whilst this conflict goes on, the implications compound and the recovery takes longer. But, of course, there's a lot of markets for Australian red meat. We trade with, as I said, over 100 markets, and many of those markets are obviously not directly impacted. So the overall export situation, we think, is we can work around it. But, of course, it's a very busy time for Australian exporters.
Okay, so the latest update from the Weather Bureau on the track map for Cyclone Narelle, this really powerful cyclone that's headed for Cape York Peninsula, has just come through. The latest update. The concerning news is that it has the system as a Category 5 when it hits the coast. The last update had it as Category 4, so it's going to be, incredibly powerful when it hits the coast. So we might go to the map now and I'll talk you through those latest details. So you can see out there in the Coral Sea, the dark red position of it at the moment as a Category 5. And they're saying at the moment sustained wind gusts near the centre of 220 k's an hour with wind gusts to 315 k's an hour. So that has increased substantially over the last couple of updates. It was 280 a little earlier today. So those winds at the core of the cyclone now at 315 kilometres an hour. It is 355 k's east of Cohen. It's moving west at 27 k's an hour. And the last update had it hitting the coast in that Port Stewart area, that little Port Stewart area, excuse me, at 7 a.m. And so that's still the case, a 7 a.m. crossing expected, and still expected to go directly over that community of Cohen, which is a community of 300 to 400 people. We were just speaking to one of the elders there, or traditional owners in that community, who's lived there her whole life. She says, she's never experienced anything as strong as this, so there's a fair bit of concern in the community of Cohen. And as it progresses across the Cape, authorities expecting up to 500 millimetres of rain, and then hitting at that Arakoon area as well. An Indigenous community on the other side of Cape expected to be a Category 2 there. And then over in the Northern Territory, over the weekend, expected to be a Category 3 system when it hits the Territory as well. I'll just read a little bit more information on this now because it's significant information that's just come through on this and concerning that, it looks like it's going to be a Cat 5 when it hits the coast. So very destructive wind gusts in excess of 250 k's an hour, possible near the centre of the severe cyclone as it crosses the Cape Coast. Very destructive wind gusts will persist about the centre of Narelle for some distance inland. So that's particularly concerning for that community of Cohen. Just repeating that, very destructive wind gusts will persist about the centre of Narelle for some distance inland. Cohen's about 30-40 k's inland. Destructive wind gusts to 160 k's likely from Lockhart River to Cape Flattery from tonight. Destructive wind gusts are likely to persist near the centre of Narelle as it moves across Cape York Peninsula on Friday. So that's some of that latest information from the Bureau on what's happening with Narelle at the moment. I've been keeping an eye as well on what the weather conditions in Queensland right now as this approaches the coast. And when I looked about an hour ago, the wind gusts were up around 60 k's an hour to the south of the system on parts of the coast. And there'd been 100 millimetres of rain in the Daintree area ahead of this as well. And so just taking a look at what's happening with the wind gusts at the moment in Queensland, yeah, the strongest I can see are 65 k's an hour at the moment at Low Isles off that Cairns area. And so that is the strongest winds at the moment. And the rain hasn't really started falling just yet. It's, yeah, often the situation with these cyclones that the rain really starts coming down after the centre of the cyclone passes the coast. But to the south of that, you can expect those rain totals to really start picking up. So, yes, stick with us on the ABC News channel. We'll keep you across those details with Cyclone Narelle. The percentage of Indigenous babies born at a healthy birth weight hasn't improved in 9 years, according to the latest update on the Closing the Gap targets. Experts say there's evidence bespoke services led by community are the key to success.
6-month-old Makaide is growing quickly.
Bro, you've put on weight since last Wednesday.
He was born over 2.5 kilos, the benchmark for a healthy life.
You're thriving! Yeah.
Makaide is being checked at Waminda, an Aboriginal health organisation that places an emphasis on birthing on country. His mum works there too.
It's embedded in our culture, birthing our babies on country, naturally, and just like a place of belonging for us.
But not all babies come into the world like Makaide. The gap in birth weight between Indigenous and non-Indigenous babies has not improved since 2017.
It's like starting a race and you're behind the start line. So babies are small, they're sick, they're susceptible to illness.
The government recently awarded $44 million for birthing on country programs, including Waminda.
We need to reconfigure the system that it's connected, that it's mum and bub centred, but also it's resourced appropriately.
Birth weight and life expectancy are 2 of the 19 Closing the Gap targets that are not on track to be met. Data shows only 4 are on target, while 4 continue to go backwards, with suicide and adult imprisonment rates worsening.
We're asking governments to think about the urgency of these and certainly thinking about different solutions working with community.
The government says the data reinforces the need to work together, while the opposition says it should be a wake-up call. The ultimate goal, a generation healthy and thriving. Tani Jash, ABC News.
Now let's go to sports news with Daniela Intili. Danny, hi. So much focus has been on the Matildas over the past several days. We've got to give the Socceroos a bit of publicity. What's happening with them?
Absolutely. They've named Tony Popovic, the Socceroos coach, has named a 26-player squad for this month's friendlies against Cameroon and Carousel. They'll be played in Melbourne and Sydney this month. They're going to be the last games before Australia heads to the FIFA Men's World Cup. There are 3 uncapped players in here. Nishan Velupale returns, but some really exciting prospects in this. Among them, a very young player called Lucas Harrington, who's playing currently in the US, and Tony Popovic is full of praise for him.
Yeah, Lucas is... You know, we've watched him. He's done very well, played 4 matches. He's in a strong league, playing regularly and doing extremely well. And I believe it's an opportunity to have a look at him.
The big talking point, though, was Adrian Segesic. He was formerly an Australian player. He has decided to not play for Australia and instead has chosen Croatia. He is a young 20-year-old, and Tony Popovic was quite critical about that. Let's hear what he had to say about that.
Do I promise him that they're going to play? And if they don't, I have to fear that he'll leave. It's probably better for Adrian that he's gone. I know when I was 20 or 21, when I got called in the national team, if I didn't play, all I thought about was, okay, and I'll keep fighting and hope one day I get selected by the coach. I wouldn't walk out and say, okay, make a phone call and say who else wants me.
And what's going on with the Matildas?
Well, look, never in doubt, Japan will be playing the Matildas in the final of the Asian Women's Cup. This has been the in-form team of the tournament, Joe. They thrashed South Korea 4-1 in the semis last night. Japan has scored 28 goals in this tournament so far and only conceded 1. So the Matildas, yeah.
Taking that into account, do we really have to temper our expectation? Because there's so much expectation on them going into this.
There is. Steph Catley, though, this is a typical Tilly's mindset, has said this is not mission impossible. Let's hear how they're going to approach the side.
The way that they play football is beautiful to watch. They're very technical and, just a great team, but it's definitely not mission impossible. We've beaten Japan before. We have our own strengths that I'm sure that they'll be looking at and they'll be worried about. But yeah, I think as well, the fact that it's a final, anything can happen. I've played in so many finals where my team's been the underdog and everyone's not given us a chance or written us off, and, we've come out and won.
Now, after the Japan game, the coach of Japan, Niels Nelson, he was actually full of praise for the Matildas, loves Sam Kerr, loves Alana Kennedy, but there is one player in particular that he thinks is really special, and I'd say Nathan Cleary would agree.
My absolute favourite in the whole world football player that I ever had anything to do with is Mary Fowler. She's just a character from another world, and those of you that know her better than I do, you can understand what I mean. She's special, so take care of her. You should be very proud to have an Australian player that has a character like that. She's simply amazing.
Wow, favourite in the whole world.
Amazing, isn't it?
It's sweet. And what do you got for us in AFL?
Oh, the AFL, the Sydney Swans will be playing Hawthorn, but missing two key players. Isaac Heaney is out injured, and Errol Goulden, who has had surgery. So Heaney ruled out because of a hamstring strain. Goulden has undergone surgery on his shoulder. He's going to be sidelined for 4 months. They've won the opening 2 games and sit on top of the ladder. So Sydney will use Corey Warner and Carlton Cleary to cover. Hawthorn 6th on the ladder and unchanged.
Thanks, Danny. Taking a look at the satellite image, severe cyclone Narelle is moving closer towards the far north Queensland coast. Cloud from northern WA extends through the interior to the southeast in a broad surface trough. On the synoptic chart, destructive winds and flooding rainfall are expected in northern Queensland from cyclone Narelle. Moist onshore winds will direct showers over eastern New South Wales. Looking around the country for tomorrow, starting in Queensland with widespread rain and scattered thunderstorms expected in the far north. Showers likely about the remaining eastern districts. To New South Wales and the ACT, showers and possible storms in the east, dry and partly cloudy in parts of the northern inland. In Victoria, isolated showers in the northeast and east with dry and partly cloudy conditions for the remainder. For Tassie, light showers about the western north, fine elsewhere after some patchy morning fog. In South Australia, showers expected mainly about the pastoral districts, possibly extending north. For WA, light showers over the southwest and south coast, mostly in the morning. A hot day expected over much of the southwest land division. In WA's north, showers likely over most of the Pilbara, and for the Northern Territory, showers and thunderstorms expected over the top end. Looking ahead to Saturday's forecast for the capital cities, Brisbane showers, Sydney a shower or two, Canberra showers and a possible storm, Melbourne mostly sunny, Hobart partly cloudy, Adelaide sunny, Perth mostly sunny, Darwin showers and a top of 31. Stick with us here on the ABC News channel. Going for a short break now. We'll be back soon, and more on that breaking news with Cyclone Narelle as it's getting stronger. Looks like it's going to hit the coast as a Category 5, and the wind speeds at the moment near the centre, winds gusting up to 315 k's an hour. Still looks like it's going to be a direct hit on the community of Cowan.